and we're recording. So tonight's guest is Alex Sansone of the Suited Shootist. He has a YouTube channel, and man, I tell you what, he has personally helped me out with, dialing in my concealment and just helping me to like recalibrate my mindset as far as how I conceal and why I conceal. Alex, thanks a bunch for coming on tonight.
Hey man, awesome to be here. I appreciate you having me on. You've had a pretty distinguished guest list so far, so I guess you're kind of scraping the bottom of the barrel. And we're getting desperate to have me on. But no, in all seriousness, I really appreciate it, and also thank you for your support and participation, because you were gracious enough to do a live stream for me as well. So I'm happy to return the favor.
Man, it was a ton of fun. I really enjoyed it.
Yeah, dude.
Yeah. So let's see. Let's just dive right into it, right? Like, why
Mhm.
can't I wear my 511 pants and my 9 line apparel everywhere I go? Like, why would that be a problem?
Well, see, the beautiful thing is it's a free country and you absolutely can. But there are certain times where it may not necessarily be appropriate. And there are certain times where you may want to communicate something other than those lifestyle brands, because, it's one of those things where at this point, kind of the 511 tuxedo has become quite literally, it's become a meme of the starter pack for I carry a gun but act like I don't. And we've heard ever since the early days of IDPA that fishing vest was sort of maligned as the shoot me first vest. And so really my thing is that if that's what people want to wear, I mean, okay, cool, but you don't have to wear tactical clothing. You don't have to wear oversized clothing in order to be able to conceal defensive tools effectively. And the challenge, and the whole reason that I started the blog and then went on to the YouTube channel, was because most of the people that were putting out content about concealment either were currently or previously carrying a gun professionally. And so they were existing in this world where being armed was somewhere between acceptable and expected. And even down here living in Texas, um, that's not always the case. I've been in circumstances where either professionally or socially carrying a firearm was some degree of inappropriate, and and I know I'm not the only one. So I struggled for the longest time because I got into the gun space pretty much kind of in college and right when I graduated. So the late aughts. Um, and when I came to Houston, I was working the gun counter for a couple of years, and so I was wearing 511 pants and a gun shop polo shirt all day. And my version of concealment was I left the shop, I untucked the shirt to cover my gun, but it still said, Joe Blow's firearms right across the chest. And so it's like, you know, it was not, it certainly wasn't subtle. And once I left the retail world and started working in corporate space, at that point, my professional, my social circles broadened. Because when you're working at a gun shop, you're working with other gun people, you're talking with other gun people. It is, I'm not going to necessarily go so far as to call it an echo chamber, but you are definitely surrounded by like minded individuals. Pretty much everybody that you're interacting with on a daily basis, at least the concept of owning and potentially carrying firearms for defensive purposes is on their mind. It's not necessarily the case when you're working in, the office of a telecom company. And so navigating those social situations and those professional situations became a bit more challenging. And I came from this space where if you weren't carrying a full size duty gun, a spare mag, an extra gun, and a knife, you didn't take this seriously. Well, when my work uniform went from 511 pants and a polo shirt to a suit and tie, suddenly that gear became a lot more challenging to accommodate without it just being, ridiculously obvious. And so I started looking for where the compromises potentially need to be made. And that's kind of how the whole thing started. But, and it's kind of a long-winded answer to what you were asking, but
I love long-winded answers.
yeah, it's kind of the best I got because if that's your jam, just if the whole 9-line thing is what you want to communicate to other people about you as a person, cool, rock on. But if you feel like the only way that you can carry the tools that you need to is to dress like an off-duty cop, I'm here to tell you that's not the case. And that a lot of guys in the defensive space would benefit from improving their style. And there's a whole bunch of reasons why.
So, just for the folks that may not be watching this on YouTube or Facebook or anything, just for folks that might be listening to it on Spotify or Anchor or Apple iTunes, can you describe what you're wearing right now, and
Sure.
maybe even go into the type of dress that you would wear on a regular basis? Like, what is
Yeah,
the
absolutely.
Alex Sansone tuxedo? Or the Alex Sansone uniform. What is that?
I have a couple, and again, it depends on what the circumstances call for. What I'm wearing is kind of my podcast uniform because I decided that I wanted something kind of memorable as part of the brand of the Suited Shootist. And typically, when people think guns and suits, invariably they gravitate towards James Bond. He's been the most iconic person that occupies both those spaces for 60 years at this point. English tailoring being what it is, most of his stuff is very conservative, very dark, solid fabrics, things like that. And I wanted to make sure that I wasn't playing into that stereotype because the other person kind of in the gun world that is known for dark suits and white dress shirts is Agent 47 from the Hitman series. And I didn't want to be that kind of cosplay. So what I'm wearing is it's going to seem like I'm shilling a bit here, but it is a custom shirt and a custom jacket, both from Adam Ross Custom, who is a local clothier here that I work with. It's kind of a blush pink shirt. It's a kind of a robin's egg blue sport coat with a lavender window check. It's got these big peak lapels. I did a video on sort of the why behind all of this. And what I was going for is definitely something that is more kind of in the spirit of Italian tailoring for a couple of reasons. Number one, that's my heritage. My bloodline's Italian. And what I really appreciate about their approach to style is that it is very much personal expression, and they live in their clothing. The way it's constructed, the way it's tailored, it's designed for life. It's not designed to kind of walk through the cities and work in banks and law firms. It's designed for a slightly more active lifestyle. And so all of that I found very appealing, paired with a dark pair of denim. These are actually from Origin, the same company that does the gi. I've been really, really impressed with these so far.
Hang on a second. So the same company that makes the Origin gis, they made your denim?
Yeah. They have a line of denim. They also do work boots. Apparently, I haven't got my hands on them. They have like a whole apparel section. They started doing hoodies and some other stuff. But yeah, the jeans I've been really impressed with.
That's awesome. That's legit. Mm-hmm. Yeah, please continue.
So, but yeah, it's one of those where people get this sense of, oh, well, if I'm wearing a shirt with a collar and a jacket, it's going to be, super serious and super formal. It doesn't have to be. It can be relaxed. It can be fun. And so, something like this can set a bit of an impression without it being so outlandish that the only thing that gets remembered is the jacket, not the person wearing it.
That makes a lot of sense. So when I see Alex, it's like I don't see some gun guy, Mm-hmm. I don't see off-duty cop. What I see is Alex. Whatever his personality is, that shines through in his clothing. And that's always been like a goal of mine personally, not just to
Mhm.
be, the gun dude, not just Memphis, but, just, whatever. Like one of my goals for clothing has always been to just kind of blend in,
Mhm.
not dress up too much, not dress down too much, but just kind of dress like I belong there. Right.
And
So,
that's exactly it. And kind of going into what you're asking about, kind of what some of my uniforms are. One of my very steady go-tos, if I don't want to put a lot of thought into what it is that I'm wearing, I'm very likely going to be wearing some flavor of tan pant, navy blue shirt, and brown leather shoe. And that can either be like a leather, loafer or moccasin with a pair of chinos and a navy blue polo, or like brown work boots and like a navy blue Henley, or if I want to go super casual with it and the weather is appropriate, I've even got like a this one is arguably a little bit costumey, but I robbed it directly from Steve McQueen in The Great Escape. Just the navy blue sweatshirt with the sleeves cut off at the elbow.
oh, that's legit.
And the thing is that if you wear it correctly and it is reasonably authentic to you, it's not something that is so iconic to so many people that like he's playing dress up, and it's just different enough. For like, huh, okay, but so that's definitely a safe one for me. Another one is going to be dark denim, some kind of button-up shirt, and then a vest or sports jacket. Um, that's kind of a very safe space that it's very unusual for that to be too overdressed or too underdressed. So I would say if I've got uniforms, those are probably the two.
Okay. And so, what is the general like mentality behind that style of dress? Are you trying to blend in, or are you trying to make an impression, or are you trying to like, is it an expression of your personality or what?
For the most part, I like especially the tan pants and blue shirt thing. It's very innocuous. It's very unassuming, and you can still make an impression depending on exactly what the garments are, how well they're made, and how well they fit. Because that's the biggest piece of the puzzle. Doesn't matter what it is that you're wearing. If it fits you correctly, doesn't matter if you spent $5 on it or $5,000 on it. That is going to be kind of the intangible thing that helps to set an impression with people. Because if I am looking to be a bit more memorable, then generally I will go slightly more vibrant colors, something like this. So if the Suited Shootist has a brand, though that's going to be a little bit bolder, but without being like obnoxious about it. I'm not in like the full blown red carpet. So, like when you see professional athletes either kind of in transit on the way to the stadium, or if they're making appearances on talk shows, they're going to have these really kind of peacock type outfits on. And for folks that are in the public eye to that degree, they can get away with it. But somebody like myself, or somebody who has no real sort of public facing persona, um, unless you have a suit full or a closet full of suits, something like that is probably not going to get a whole lot of use and a whole lot of mileage. So for the most part, kind of just day to day as me, I'm not trying to be supremely memorable in the articles of clothing that I'm wearing, but I do want to make sure that what I'm wearing and how it's being worn does set an impression, and it conveys the same degree of either authenticity or authority that I need in that circumstance. Because, I mean, I got to tell you, something as simple as just travel, airline travel, wearing a collared shirt and having a smile on your face and treating the staff that you interact with like they're actual people can make your life 1,000 times easier. I'll give you an example, not of travel specifically, but again, this was one of the dance competitions that that my wife and I went to. She was at the ballroom of a hotel. I think this was actually up in Austin. I forget which hotel. And it was a nice hotel. I go to the hotel bar, order a drink, and the poor guy who was working the bar, it was either his first day or he had gotten pulled from some other section, because it was very obvious that he was in over his head. Because he had to ask for help to open a bottle of champagne.
Oh my.
And it's one of those things where, I mean, I wasn't going to bust his chops over it, but if you're working bar service and that's a question that you've got, that kind of gives me an idea of how the rest of this is going to go. So, but again, I was gracious, I was patient, and this was like 3 p.m. So, it's not like there was a line or whatever. So I had my couple of drinks, I get the bill, I look at it, and he very clearly, instead of charging me for the couple of mixed drinks that I ordered, had basically charged me for full portions of the ingredients. So the bill was like 3 times what it should have been. And so I looked over to the register, and the woman that had helped him open the bottle of champagne was there. So I walk over to her and I just go, "Hey, look, I don't want to give him any more of a hard time because clearly he's having a rough day. I'm guessing that he doesn't normally work here, because I don't think this is how you're supposed to ring those up, and I don't want to embarrass him. So, would you mind just correcting this for me?" And she just looked at it, and she was just appalled. She was embarrassed for him. She's like, "Oh my God, I am so sorry." I'm like, I don't need, there's no apology necessary. He's in the weeds. You're in over your head. Clearly you guys are having a rough weekend already, and it's only Friday afternoon. So, I just don't want to make him feel any worse than he already does. So not only did she comp the bill, but she told me, he's like, "Hey, look, I'm working the bar the rest of the weekend. You come see me. I didn't pay for a drink for 3 days."
Oh, dude.
And when I say that, I'm not talking about like, well, you call it either. She was pouring me 2 fingers of Yamazaki 12-year and not charging me for it. So,
dude,
all because I was civil, I was gracious, and all of that combined with the fact that I rolled up looking reasonably professional. I wasn't in slides and basketball shorts. Now, would I have gotten the same treatment in slides and basketball shorts? Yeah, maybe. But the whole package makes it a lot easier for people to say yes when you ask them for things nicely.
Man.
And don't get it twisted. Every single time I closed out with her, she was getting tipped $20. So, I made sure that she was taken very well, very good care of, because she was taking good care of me. But those are the kind of things completely outside of the scope of the defensive space that dressing well and acting well can get you. Because, the whole idea behind concealed carry, effective concealed carry, aside from being equipped for your worst day, is being equipped for your worst day while reducing social friction as much as possible. All of this is exactly along the same lines. All you're trying to do is reduce social friction. And, is it under the circumstances of a life and death encounter? No. But, God willing, we have as close to 0 of those as possible in our lifetime. Whereas, how many, headache, aggravating social interactions do we typically have on a weekly basis? And, the truth of it is that, yes, conducting yourself well is probably directive number 1. But when all of that is packaged a certain way, it just conveys. There's a reason why con artists typically dress well. It's social engineering. You are more likely to get people to do things that you want when you look accessible, when you look trustworthy. And you're generally able to look more accessible and more trustworthy if you look professional. Now, what professional is varies depending on the profession. You know, if I go to my mechanic and he's dressed like this, no, that guy is screwing his customers.
So
But
I've
you know,
noticed
and
that
that's
myself.
yeah. Well, and that's the challenge is people look at it on the superficial level, and they're looking at it just from the standpoint of, okay, you know, shirt, tie, and jacket, as opposed to the core principles and applying them to, you know, to their relevant lifestyle. Just like how people try and shoot fast, or, you know, try and shoot more accurately, and what they're trying to do is shoot fast or shoot more accurately, and not do things like improve the efficiency of their draw stroke, or iron out and identify that they've got a hitch in their trigger press, or take the time to identify that they're milking the grip and that's why they're shanking rounds. Their focus is on the outcome, not the process. It's the same thing. It's all the same. It's all the same. I mean, you know, Jedlinski is fond of saying everything is jujitsu, and you know, there is definitely some merit to that. It's all just application of principle.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. Because I noticed that myself. I generally get treated better when I wear a collared shirt.
Mm-hmm.
So
And you know, the truth of the matter is that there is some defensive application to it as well. You've taken John Hearn's Who Wins, Who Loses, and Why, right?
yeah,
His theory of the well-armed gunman, where I really should remember the name of the study off the top of my head, but I don't, where they took police officers, they put them into ambiguous call responses. They dispatched them to, you know, fake calls with ambiguous circumstances, and invariably they were far less likely to shoot an innocent person in business attire than they were an innocent person dressed like a punk rocker.
yeah. Like John even mentioned it. Like John
Yeah,
Hearn even mentions it. He's like, I've never had to shoot a guy with a collared shirt.
yeah.
So, and he even says that a collared shirt should be part of your EDC. So,
You know, and it's again that, and there is merit to that. There is value to that, because again, think of your own circumstance. If you hear gunshots and you turn around and you see somebody holding a literal smoking gun and they're yelling, call the cops, call the cops. If they look like, you know, Detective Stabler versus, you know, if they look like Serpico.
yeah, it makes a lot of sense. Yeah, I would treat that person differently. Yeah. Um, so yeah, like for the type of guy that wants to just blend in, like
Mhm.
what what kind of stuff should we maybe, I don't know, stay away from, or I mean, what would she like? What should we veer more towards besides just a collared shirt?
So that's very tricky, because every sort of little microculture is different, you know. Um, for whatever, inexplicably, one of the uniforms that you see down here in Texas, in Houston specifically, is you see dudes rolling around in like Magellan fishing shirts, jeans, and flip flops.
Flip flops. Wow. Okay.
That combination makes no sense to me.
Jeans and flip flops.
But yeah, but
Okay.
you know, fishing shirt, jeans, flip flops. That is a fairly safe way to blend in Houston, Texas. But that's not necessarily going to be the case in Montana. So you know, if the default wardrobe of the surrounding population is camouflage overalls, then wearing slim fit denim and a polo shirt may stick out like a sore thumb. You know, um, I mean, like when I'm packing to, we're going out to Louisiana in a couple of weeks to visit the in-laws, because my wife is riding in her sister's Mardi Gras crew, and you know, this is small town Louisiana, so I don't really pack a whole lot of collared shirts when I go to small town Louisiana. You know, that's a lot more workwear. So, one of the things that I say is like, honestly, if I could get everybody that's shopping at 511 to just shop at Duluth Trading Company, I'd be happy, because Duluth Trading Company actually does a halfway decent job of, their fire hose pants and their jeans are pretty solid. I think that if your closet consisted of only those, you'd be all right. Um, leather boots instead of like trail shoes, I think it's a better look. And again, nobody's really going to look twice at it, but it's one of those things that is a slight elevation without being excessive about it. Like Henleys instead of t-shirts, or polo shirts instead of t-shirt, because that's a big mistake that people make, is they think that polo shirts are dressy because they have a collar on them, when they're really just a t-shirt with a collar. So, but and then like flannel or like some other kind of like workwear shirts, stuff that you would see in like World War II propaganda about like factory efforts in the US, stuff like that. Where it's a little bit of a throwback, but not so much to where like you're being an obnoxious hipster about it.
Yeah.
And so stuff like that of a decent quality, to where you're not treating your clothing like it's completely disposable anymore, unless you work in a trade that is rough on your clothing and it has to be disposable, in which case, again, those circumstances are going to kind of override, things like that. But, it's going to be different for everybody. And it's interesting because one of the video series I'm going to be doing here in the not too distant future is I'm going to be taking like the IDPA rank structure, and I'm going to be doing like C class versus A class versus master class, or versus GM class outfits. And I'm gonna do stuff like shorts and a t-shirt. Here's C class shorts and a t-shirt. Here's A class shorts and a t-shirt, and here's GM level shorts and a t-shirt, and walk people through that progression, because it can be done regardless of what the outfit is. And more than anything, all it takes is a little bit of care and a little bit of intentionality.
I am so interested in that. Oh my gosh. Yeah.
I haven't done it yet because, number one, I'm a little bit lazy, and number two, I need to clear out enough space in my study to where I can have a head to toe shot without a whole bunch of cluttered BS in the background. So that's yeah. But I need to get on that.
Or even just an overlay. You can sit here and discuss something and then just
yeah. But that's then at that point, that's a whole lot more editing than I want to do.
Yeah, that makes sense. Yeah. So let's see. Let's talk about consequences, right? Oh yeah, I'm sorry.
Before we do that, if any of your viewers or listeners are kind of at that point where they are interested in improving how they dress, but they don't know where to start, the best thing they can do to start with is get a copy of Tanner Guzzi's Appearance of Power.
Tanner, can you spell that? Tanner Guzzi?
Yeah. Tanner Guzzi, it's 2 N's, and then Guzzi is Guzzy. It's this book right here.
Oh, excellent. Yeah, The Appearance of Power. Okay. Excellent. Yeah, I need to go ahead and add that to my library.
Yeah.
As a matter of fact, I'm going to go ahead and put a link to that book in the description. I'm going to see if I can find it on Amazon. And also, I've been buying a lot from thrift books as well lately.
Yep.
Yeah. Let's talk a little bit about one of the reasons why I dress the way I do is to avoid consequences, because I think that there's consequences to the way that you dress. Like, for instance, if I wear my 511 tuxedo, people are going to treat me a different way than if I wear, polo and a jeans. And also, if I'm slack with my concealment, if I'm not minding how much of my gun conceals, then there's different consequences to that, whether it be social friction on one end, or on the other end, I'm attracting the attention of a violent felon. And so, is there something that you can contribute to that thought?
So yeah, I mean, there's there's an article that I have on my blog, and it's going to be reposting to Gat Daily here in the not too distant future, if it hasn't already, where I share 3 fairly benign stories of people's concealment failures and sort of the potential fallout that can stem from bad concealment. Because, like you said, uh, it depends on who you're around and who sees it. Because there are a conversation that I have with Jack Clemens. He made a very good point. He's like, a lot more people see us concealing than we think. They just don't care. And that's the thing is that we don't get to choose whether or not the people that notice care, or to what degree. The only thing that we have any control over is the amount of information to which they have access. And my biggest beef is that people think that, they're like, oh, well, I've been able to get away with XYZ for so long and nothing's happened. Well,
but have you though?
And that's exactly it, is that there was a young lady in the Filter Concealment Workshop who shared a story of, she thought that she had gotten away with effective concealment for her entire time at this one office. And literally at her going away party, when she was moving to some different employment situation, her boss made a comment that let it be known that he knew she was carrying. And that's the thing that that folks get wrong more than anything else, is that the thought process, number one, the thought process doesn't always go from they notice nothing to that's a gun. Generally, it tends to evolve. It's that looks out of place. Why does that look out of place? I'm curious enough that I'm going to look at it some more. Okay, that looks like this. And especially when you're talking about something like a work environment where you are interacting with these people for what is effectively a third of your life, 8 to 10 hours a day, 5+ days a week. It is impossible to work in proximity with people like that without them either getting to know certain things about you, or them at least drawing conclusions about you. You cannot avoid people drawing conclusions about you whether or not you interact with them. And so it very well may be that even if you don't wear anything branded, you don't have anything on your vehicle, just based on your age, race, sexual orientation, what you drive, etc., what music you listen to, people's implicit biases will start to formulate some kind of profile on what they expect you to behave like. And so if carrying a gun plays into that, then if they start drawing those conclusions and they express that to somebody else, then all of a sudden you've got this kind of game of office telephone going on.
Yeah.
You've gotten a little bit pixelated on me. Are we still good?
Yeah, we're still good.
Cool.
Can you hear me okay?
I got you loud and clear. I just wanted to make sure that my connection didn't fall out. But yeah, and that's the thing is that it's rarely A to B. It's more of this compounding thing. And just because people don't say something doesn't mean they didn't notice something. And just because people aren't saying something to you doesn't mean they're not saying something to somebody else. So people have a very false sense of confidence in terms of how good their concealment is and how discreet they're being.
That makes, yeah, thanks for filling that in a little bit more.
Mm-hmm. And then
because,
the other part of it that, I'm sure if you care to, we can touch on, is the fact that kind of my claim to fame is I'm the only person that I know that talks about actually getting fired from a job for violating company weapons policy. So I've also seen kind of the worst end of the spectrum of when you get it really wrong, what can actually happen. And based on what I've seen and just that whole experience, there are far too many people that are far too confident about what's going on in their workplace.
Yeah, absolutely. Um, yeah, I got spoken to for a box cutter. So basically, just super quick, not
Yeah.
to distract from the conversation, but we're at a Christmas party, and one of my coworkers had a box that she couldn't open. All right, well, let me go ahead and take a look at that. And I pulled the box cutter out. It was orange, maybe $5 from Home Depot.
Yeah.
And by the end of the day, my manager got an email saying, "Hey, box cutters violate the weapons policy, and we don't want to see it again." And I was like, "Really, really, a box? Okay." And so you can extrapolate how they would feel about if they had discovered me carrying or anything like that. So
Well, and
it
again,
became a
not
cost
only
benefit
that,
analysis thing.
but think about it this way. So you have now publicized the fact that you carried a box cutter, which is by any measure a fairly innocuous and benign tool. But if you were the only person there that was equipped to that level, again, even something as trivial as that level of preparedness can then allow people to start drawing other conclusions about you because you violated not just the policy, but the social norms of the group. So you have already identified yourself as, I don't completely play by your rules. And so somebody that's within that group can let their imagination run wild. It's like, oh, well, I mean, he carries a knife. I wonder what else he carries he doesn't talk about.
Yeah, so that ends up being very interesting.
It can
Um,
be.
Daggum. Yeah, so yeah, this is already becoming a very interesting conversation. Yeah, so let's see. As far as some family that are looking for, as far as guides on how to conceal better, um, we already know about your blog, the Suited
Mhm.
Shootist. We know about the Filster Concealment Workshop. Are there any other guys that can help out my friends and family to help them not just conceal better, but kind of find themselves in a style that allows them to, I don't know, feel like they're not wearing a costume when they conceal?
So that is that's tricky because there's definitely going to be some trial and error to it. You don't just fall into it and have it immediately make sense. One of the things that I appreciate that Tanner does is he breaks down the three style archetypes of rugged, refined, and rakish. So very high level. Rugged is Indiana Jones, refined is James Bond, rakish is Captain Jack Sparrow. And so everybody is some combination of those three. And once you have a sense of what which of those is kind of the dominating interest in your style profile, you can start dressing to that. And so again, if rugged is the primary one, then it's going to be a lot of work wear, even informal wear. It's going to be a lot of stuff like flannel and tweed, stuff that you would see like out hunting in the English countryside kind of thing. If it's refined, you're going to see a lot more, fine wools, silks, linens, delicate fabrics, stuff like that. A lot more of kind of what you would typically think of as dressy items. And rakish is definitely more of kind of the rock star side of things where you're very loud and boisterous and kind of look at to make an impression more than and so it's about finding that balance. But what's critical is it requires a certain level of understanding of who you are as a person. So, if You are an IT consultant, for example, and you're just dripping with, Viking and sheepdog, and your vehicle is festooned with, 3%er stuff. It's a fucking costume. Sorry, you know. And that's what's hilarious to me about this is there is so much of this industry that's cosplay. That is unironic cosplay. Because the cool guy operators are doing this or wearing this, I should too. Chuck Pressburg made a very good point when he was on the Big Tech's podcast, and they were talking about basically mirroring, some professional cool guy rifle setup. He said, look, if you're mirroring somebody's equipment, but your job description doesn't match theirs, why are you doing it? I'm not kicking indoors. I'm not fast ripping out of helicopters. I'm not doing, amphibious vehicle takedowns or anything like that. So I'm going to dress the way I want to live my life, and I'm going to incorporate the defensive tools into that. What I'm not going to do anymore, and I say that, is I'm not going to make the firearm the nucleus of everything and build it around that, because at that point it becomes a very limiting factor. I don't remember what the exact nature of it was, but there was couldn't have been more than a few months ago. My wife actually made a comment offhand that early on in our relationship, it bothered her that I would or wouldn't go places based on whether or not I could carry a gun. She found it very off-putting. And so, and the other reason why I think that's important is, for the most part, we all accept that people need to come to terms with the fact that the firearm is not a lucky rabbit's foot. It is not this talisman that wards off evil. It is a tool that simply amplifies the capabilities of the user. Yet people that express that thought will almost in the same breath bemoan going anywhere where they can't carry a gun at all. I don't understand how people can justify those two thoughts existing simultaneously. Now, given my druthers, will I prefer to have a firearm? Yes, absolutely. But I can tell you that some of the most fulfilling experiences that I've had in my life have been in places where, not only was it like illegal for me to carry a gun, it was really illegal for me to carry a gun. Because like a friend's wedding in New York, my wife and I went to Chicago for our anniversary one year. And by pure happenstance, the restaurant that we ended up going to after a show, the cast of that Broadway show decided to come in and have dinner at that same restaurant. They were sitting at the table next to us. So, I took her to the Dominican Republic for our honeymoon. None of those things are things I could have experienced if I had let the gun dictate what I do and I don't do. Now, I'm also not the type of person to pass judgment where if people don't derive satisfaction or enrichment from the same things that I do, I don't care. I don't care in the slightest. The arts are not everybody's thing. I personally don't really get monster truck rallies. I know that they're insanely popular. I'm not going to point and laugh at like the bunch of toothless hillbillies that go and watch monster trucks, because I don't think that way. I'm not going to denigrate somebody because their pastimes don't line up with mine. But generally speaking, I see folks living a much more limited and confined lifestyle if the firearm is the dictating factor. Because the truth of the matter is, the most dangerous people I know are not supremely concerned with whether or not they can bring a gun places.
Wow. I'll tell you what, Alex, this has been a really interesting conversation. It's given me a lot to think about personally, uh, and I really appreciate it. Where can my viewers and my listeners find you?
So the best places to find me are going to be the YouTube channel, Instagram, Facebook, and as much as it pains me to say it, TikTok, as the Suited Shootist. We also have the Bespoke Solutions Facebook page, which is Facebook group, and that one is kind of basically I ripped off the Filster Concealment Workshop in terms of to kind of create that same environment of a safe and judgment-free area for people to experiment and crowdsource ideas, because that is another big obstacle for a lot of people. Is they're concerned that if they start deviating completely from sort of the ambient social norm, that they're going to be made fun of. And so some of this is kind of easy to screw up, and it is easy to look foolish if you're not doing it the right way. And so, that was kind of the goal, was to just create a group where dudes could come in and go, hey, here's what I'm thinking about. And it serve as kind of a think tank and allow for constructive criticism without, the shit talk and the normal kind of venomous noise that you find on social media.
Yeah, there's a lot of noise like that.
Yeah.
Excellent. Um, let's see. Did I leave anything out? Like, is there anything else you're passionate about that you're working on right now?
So it's in the very, very early stages, and it's not going to go live probably even this year. But one of the things that I am working on is I've taken a page from, well, let me rephrase. I've drawn inspiration from Akil Kadir and Tiffany. And I'm working on a very introductory level curriculum for like the gun curious people, because I've already been tapped a couple times by people within my circle, and because I'm kind of the gun guy, they've approached me and say, hey, this is what I'm thinking about, but I don't really know where to start. I don't really know where to go. And so my desire is to kind of help them dip that toe into the water in a controlled fashion, because that's another thing that I think that our space really does a disservice to the gun curious and the gun agnostic people. Because since we're on the side of, righteousness and morality and all this, people feel content to just kind of cloak themselves in the Bill of Rights and chant shall not be infringed, and absolutely just shame and denigrate anybody that can't wrap their mind around the idea of a defensive firearm and isn't just wholly on board with it. Because, look at the major talking points. They're all either insanely condescending, or they're leveraging the same fear-mongering emotional manipulation that the anti-gun crowd tries to use to scare people into getting them on their side. And so everybody has the opportunity to be a 2A ambassador. When you hear that phrase, you think about some basement dwelling neckbeard strapping a rifle across his chest and walking into the local Starbucks. And I have a severe problem with those people, not because I don't think they should be allowed to do what they're doing, but I have a problem with it because they make my job that much harder. And I think that we owe it to not only ourselves as the gun community at large, but to sort of the adjacent social spaces of people that don't really have a strong opinion yet, to be as accessible and as welcoming as we possibly can, because the people that are like the people that were out protesting the NRA convention in Houston, talking about NRA has blood on their hands and baby killers and all this other nonsense. The people that are just the complete polar opposite side of the ideological spectrum, there's not necessarily a lot of headway to be made there because they're already so deeply entrenched in the belief. But what people neglect is that there's this whole middle section of the bell curve where a good chunk of the population exists that doesn't have skin in the game yet. And all they're looking for is the person that makes the most accessible, compelling, and not logical, but intuitive argument. And when all we do is chant talking points and play very directly into the caricature of the unreasonable, unwavering, foaming at the mouth zealot that the anti-gun crowd likes to paint us as, they can say, look, see, they're acting just the way that we told you they would. That gives them credibility to then spew all of the bullshit that because we've given them the credibility of the easily identifiable. So it's like, so if you can be articulate, if you can be unemotional, but still, if you can make this material engaging enough that somebody will voluntarily approach you and say, hey, I'm thinking about this. I'm scared. I'm uncomfortable. I don't know if it's for me. And instead of bludgeoning them over the head with all the reasons why they're wrong and should think like, you know what? I get it. Let's take you from here. Let's dip the toe in the water, get you a couple baby steps, and go from there. And you know what the reality is that not everybody should be carrying a gun. Do they have the right to? Absolutely. But there are people in my life where when they asked me about carrying a gun, I told them to go get pepper spray and a copy of The Gift of Fear, because that is emotionally what they were equipped to do. So, but in the same vein, what I didn't do is, what are you, crazy? You have no business with a gun. No. But it requires a much higher level of empathy and social fluency than a lot of these people have. So
whenever you get that curriculum rolled out, please let me know so that I can get a seat. Please.
100%.
Absolutely. Dadgum, dude, you've been awesome. I've really enjoyed this. Alex, thanks a bunch for coming on.
Hey, thanks for having me.
I'm gonna link all of the books and the Facebook groups and all the socials. I'll link all those up down below. Folks, thank you so much for spending your time with us. You could have spent your time doing anything with anyone, anywhere, and instead you're watching us. And I just want you to know how much I appreciate you spending your time with us. I really do. Thanks a bunch. Thank you for watching. Welcome to Memphis.